What's up, everyone? We hope you've been well. If you're new to the channel and you don't know who we are, my name is Zach, my wife is Tracy. We, along with our 3 Siberian Huskies, are the Sunshine State Vikings. We are Florida-based adventurers looking to do more of what we love while exploring the craft of sharing our adventures with you. Now, for those adventures, we typically ride out in our 2014 Toyota Tacoma named Loki here. It is an off-road overland build. And one of the critical pieces of this build is our Yeti 1500X power bank. This is the backbone of our adventures, keeping all of our equipment charged, like cameras, our fridge, and depending on the weather, whether it's a hot sunny day or whether it's a cool wintry night, we have either a battery AC or 2 heated blankets is typically what we use. They're very power hungry pieces of equipment. And though the 1500X has a lot of power stored inside of it, it is a limited supply, and we have the need of trying to get more power supplied to it to keep it topped off throughout our adventures. That's where we get into today's install, and one of the reasons why we went with Goal Zero is because they have a pretty awesome solution to this, and that is the Yeti Link Vehicle Integration Kit. This is going to tie our Yeti 1500X power supply to the truck's alternator to supply it with about 450 to 750 watts of input while we're driving around. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got. This is the Yeti Link module. This is the thing that's going to actually do the control, the input of the power into the battery bank. It's also going to keep our vehicle safe from over supplying the 1500X with the truck's battery, cutting it off at a safe limit so that we can always guarantee to be able to start our truck up in the morning when we go to start the next day of adventure. Then you have the Yeti tank extension cable that's going to take it from these are the alternator taps. This is going to go either on the alternator or the battery. We're probably going to install it on the battery since simply the fuse block has to sit somewhere and we've got more room in the engine bay. But the extension cable essentially goes from the battery or alternator tap over to the Yeti Link expansion module. So first step is getting our Yeti 1500X modified with the expansion module, and then we can continue on from the install there. We'll explain a couple other things down the road here, but let's get started. And so with getting started on this, first things first, we've got to open up our Yeti Link expansion module box and get it out, see how we're going to get this installed. It comes with another power supply, a couple of loose pieces here, power supply cable. Down below here is the expansion module and a set of instructions. First thing we're going to have to do for the expansion module is we're going to have to open up, I believe, this panel here, where this whole section, this whole plastic piece here is going to be replaced with the expansion module, just like that, so that we can plug the battery in from the back and or the new front. And so we've confirmed with the instructions, and the first step is to remove this right side panel of the battery. We've got 6 small Phillips head screws here. And now we can remove this right side plastic panel piece, exposing some connectors here. There are 2 connectors. There is the negative and positive EC8 terminal here, and then there's this very small, what looks like a micro USB cable terminal, and that is for plugging in the data cable of the Yeti Link expansion module. And so here are the 2 cords on the bottom of the Yeti Link expansion module. Like I said, this is the micro USB data cable. Get that plugged in nice and snug. And then we can also plug in our positive and negative cable here to that port. And it is very stiff to get that plugged in. but ultimately you want to get it fully seated down to the back. And then we can get this shimmied in here and pile those cables down into that little spot. Just like that. The front of the Yeti expansion link will sit flush with the face of the battery, and also the back will sit just about flush out of the back of the battery bank as well. And so the next thing we're gonna do here is we're going to install the 4 new longer screws. One here, 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 and here. And of course I had to get a different screwdriver because the one I was using before was a little too thick to be able to fit down into these slots. And there we go. Yeah, these slots are definitely a little frustrating to get those screws down into. Just kinda gotta get the screw, press up on the top of it and guide it on down. But we now have our Yeti link installed. That's firm in place. And so now that we have the Yeti link installed, the next step here is to ensure that we have our Yeti link in vehicle mode. So this Yeti link is used for 2 reasons: for connecting to your vehicle's battery or connecting the Yetis to individual tank batteries. So it comes originally in tank mode, but what we're gonna do here in this pinhole, we're gonna stick a long, slender object down in there and we're gonna press it 4 times to ensure that we're in the right mode. If you're installing this battery and the Yeti link to your vehicle, you 100% want it in vehicle mode, because in tank mode, the Yeti link will allow your battery bank to drain your vehicle's battery bank in entirety, and we don't want that. And now to show you the difference between tank mode and vehicle mode, I'm gonna push the pin connector here 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. We should be watching the tank lights blinking simultaneously. That means the Yeti link is in vehicle mode. And for our purpose, that's where we want to be. But I wanna show you what tank mode looks like, because it's very important to make sure we're in the right mode. So I'm gonna click this 1 more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we should be watching the tank lights scroll from the bottom to the top now. And we are now back in tank mode. But like I said, we gotta be in vehicle mode for our purpose. So 1 more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're blinking simultaneously once again. And we are now ready to move on to the next step, because our 1500X is installed with the Yeti link and it is in vehicle mode like we need it. And for this next step, we're gonna need our male EC8 to ring terminal cable. This is what we're going to tie to either our alternator or our battery. Our alternator is tucked down below here and our battery is right here. We're going to opt to install it to our battery to make this install just a little bit simpler for us. Now, looking at this cable setup, one thing I do find to be a little bit of a bummer, and what's gonna make this just a little bit more complicated for us, is that we have this 80 amp fuse block. Now this cable here is what's going to actually tie to the positive lead of either the alternator or the battery, but you can see just how short this cable is. If I tie this here, it does not give us very many options. So we're going to opt for doing what we're gonna consider a temporary install, and we're going to just zip tie our fuse block to this bundle of wires here. And at a later date, we're hoping to replace this short cable with a longer cable so that we can get it mounted up to the side of the engine bay and have a cable that reach longer to make this just a little bit cleaner later on down the road. As well, mentioning cleaner, we 100% know that our cable setup here is absolutely disgusting, and we are in the process of trying to pick out a electronics manager so we can clean up all of these wires. But for this one last install, we're gonna just be throwing 1 more ring terminal on both our positive lead here and our negative frame tap right here. So we're just gonna do a quick time lapse, but essentially this cable will install here. We're gonna zip tie this here, and then this is the EC8 cable. This is what's going to plug into the extension cord. which will find its way down through the engine bay, routing to the back of the truck where our battery bank is. This is the negative terminal, which is going to land to our negative stud here, and this positive terminal is going to land to the other side of the fuse block. But like I said, we're just gonna get this put in real quick and we'll carry on from there. And so there we have it. We have our ring terminal cables installed. Our fuse block is installed here. It's pretty secure here, zip tied to the cable bundle. And now what we're left with is a whip out of an EC8 cable. We are going to be attaching our extension cable to this and routing it to the location of our battery. For us, that's going to be routing through the wall of our bed of the truck. That's where we keep our battery bank. We're not going to show you the routing of the cable, but we'll take you to the bed of the truck after we have the cable routed. But once we get started here, we have our 12-foot extension cable. And this here is what we are going to be using to extend our connection from the battery. So we have this end of the cable and this end of the cable. This one is at a 90 degrees and this one is at a straight. This is the one that we're going to be connecting right here. It's a bit tight, bit snug, but you want to press it in all the way. And then we are also given a protector for this junction. You're essentially going to clasp this shut. Around those cable ends. And that's going to protect that junction from any physical damage and risking it from coming apart. But right now, we're going to extend this out to the bed of the truck, and we'll see you back there. And so welcome to the bed of our truck. We didn't have too big of issues running that cable. We did opt to lose a little bit of length on the extension cable to get the connected whip to the extension cable zip tied up to a higher location. We do a lot of off-roading and we end up in very watery situations a lot of the time, so we wanted to get that connector just up as high as we could, and we have it routed along our frame rails and into the bed of the truck here. We've just drilled a 2-inch hole into the back of our composite bed on the Tacoma. Now, brief explanation as to why our battery bank lives here. There is no more cab space. It is usually me, Tracy, and our 3 Siberian Huskies that ride around in the back seat of the truck. They have a goose gear platform back there, and the battery bank is just too big to ride around with them. So we developed a system to get the battery bank to live in this back corner of the truck, and we've done a lot of stuff to protect that battery bank from, say, water situations and beating up. We actually have this battery sitting in a plastic tote box that we have some cutouts for accessing stuff, and it's done very well. Now, also to explain, if you've ever wondered throughout this video as to why we're not possibly just using the 12-volt charger, we are. That is how we have been topping off the battery for the longest time. Now, that 12-volt charger has both a 5-amp option and a 10-amp option. The 10-amp option has never worked for us, and we've only ever been able to use the 5-amp option, which produces us 60 watts an hour into the battery bank. Now, we can easily overcome that 60 watts an hour that we get driving around with those larger accessories. Those are what we're trying to create a solution for here, because with those larger accessories, we easily drain the battery, and that 60 watts an hour doesn't put in more than those appliances take out in a night. So we do eventually lose all of the power out of the battery, and about every 3 to 4 nights we do have to find a campsite
to find an outlet to top off our battery bank so that we can continue going on our adventures. Now, because the battery lives back here, we have an extension cord that we run from the inverter over into the cab, and we have everything protected with some split loom. This is the extension cord that we've been using. When we did the original install, we made a mistake by only getting a hot and neutral extension cord, and we would very much like to have a full-on extension cord with hot, neutral, and a ground. So at a later date, we're going to be adjusting the stuff leaving the bed cover here and getting everything else routed out through that hole that we've just created. But for right now, this video is solely about whether or not the Yeti Link vehicle integration kit is too much of a pain to install, which I think relatively we found it's been a pretty good simple install. Do wish that the terminals were, or the wires going on the terminal were a little longer for the battery area, but we do have enough cord into the bed here. We have just enough. This is going to be a pretty big headache to be able to remove the battery in and out, but it is enough to get the battery connected up and living back here. So that's just a brief explanation as to why we have our setup like we do. But we now have our cable attached to the battery and we have it set up here. We can go ahead and try to get our battery plugged in temporarily just like this so that we can test out and see what kind of numbers we get. Also worth noting this 12 volt charger, like I said, that we've never been able to get the 10 amp to work. If you look at the reviews on Goal Zero, that is the case for most people. So if you are looking at the 12 volt charger as an option, you can expect to get only about 60 watts an hour of charge out of that. And with this being the 1500, I think when we're down to about where we're at, like 18%, we're looking at about 12, 13 hours, 14, 15, 16 hours of charging needed to top off the battery again. So there we go. We've just got the battery plugged in and we've got our lights up. So our truck battery is now showing as a tank battery, and you can see it's not drawing on it. The truck is not running. This should start charging the battery once the truck is running, once the voltage reaches a production voltage, if you will, because once you kick on the alternator, battery will typically go from, 12 volts up to like 12.8 or 13, and I think that's when the Yeti Link will decide to start charging our battery bank off of the truck. But we're gonna hop out of the bed because it'll just be incredibly loud if we're trying to check it out inside the bed here. So let's hop out, turn on the truck, and see what kind of numbers we can get out of the Yeti Link. Well, there you have it. That is our install of the Goal Zero Yeti Link Vehicle Integration Kit. It was pretty simple to install, and those numbers there that you just witnessed were right about 400, just under. And though those numbers aren't what we stated earlier, being 450 to 750, that 400 range is still absolutely amazing and is going to fit our needs perfectly. There's no way that that's not going to be able to keep that battery topped off no matter how much we drain it in a night. Also, in full transparency, we did 3 test runs of charging the battery off the alternator. The first one was before what you guys witnessed, and we did get the numbers of 450. We just wanted to ensure that everything was right before we showed you the clip of testing it out with the numbers. And then that second trial was the one that you witnessed with the numbers right around 400. And then just to be sure that there wasn't something wrong with that second trial, we did a third one and the numbers were actually less. Now, that may be slightly concerning, but I don't think it is. I think what's happening here is between all of those turning the truck on and off, we've been draining the battery
the battery a little bit each time. And this is probably a good thing that it looks like the Yeti Link module is regulating how much it's intaking, letting the battery on the truck charge before it's taking the full charge from the alternator to top itself off. But still, even with numbers around 400, we were looking at about 20% battery and needing to charge for about 5 hours to a full charge, which is just ridiculously impressive in our book. A couple other things to note here is that with the Yeti Link now, if we were to say take a charger from a 120 volt charger from like the wall and plug it into the Yeti Link, or we plug in solar and plug it into the Yeti Link, those power sources will charge the Yeti Link, and then the Yeti Link will eventually charge the battery on the truck, which is pretty cool as well. So if we're in between adventures and we top off the battery in the bed here with, say, an extension cord and the charger, we know that the truck battery will get topped off as well. And if you've been wondering why we're not opting for solar, that's an easy answer for us, because we're adventurers and we do stuff throughout the day, especially with the truck. Solar doesn't really suit our needs because we're driving around throughout the day, doing off-road wheeling, overlanding, and exploring things, and we typically stop more towards the night where we're not going to get anything out of a solar panel. But if we did have a solar panel, and say we did have one mounted to the truck where it would suit us fine, that solar panel plugged into the Yeti Link on our battery bank would then also top off the truck as well, which is pretty cool. So we are impressed with the Yeti Link vehicle integration kit on our battery bank. With this type of thing, you're going to probably be wondering how it's done in the future. Is it still working a year from now? And if you're watching this video later on down the road and you want to ask us that question, feel free to reach out to us in the comments section below, and we will tell you how our experience has been with the Yeti Link installed on our Goal Zero battery here, whether it's still suiting our needs or if we've run into issues down the road. We would be more than happy to provide that information to you. So just feel free to ask and see how it's going. We did notice that there was a lack of Yeti Link videos on YouTube, and that was one of the reasons why we really wanted to make it, because we have been looking at using this because this just seems to fit us the best. We're driving the truck mostly throughout the day, so why aren't we just using the truck to charge for all of our needs? So we're excited to get to use it. We've got a trip upcoming just next week. It's going to be the next thing on our channel. We're taking on the Georgia Traverse, and we're excited for that. That'll be the first trip we get to test this system out. But for now, until then, thank you for watching. Do more of what you love, and we hope to see you on the next one.
To learn more about us and find out ways to help support the adventures, visit our website, sunshinestatevikings.com. And to keep up with our adventures, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification button, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Sunshine State Vikings.